Welcome to the Two Off the Tee show on Fantasy Six Packs YouTube channel. If you are not subscribed to Fantasy Six Packs YouTube channel, please be sure to hit that subscribe button now. I am your host, Keith Flemming. That is at Keith Flemming on Twitter. Normally, I am joined by my co-host, the gambling degenerate Alan, aka Actively Lazy 85 on Twitter, but he's in Jamaica. Lucky for him. But I am very happy to have my main man Nate from We Know Fantasy. Nate's Twitter handle is at WKFNATE. Nate is just on an absolutely absurd heater. I have been tooting my own horn lately, but I think Nate is the one person I can, without a question, say has been killing it even more than I have this year. Nate, correct me if I'm wrong. I have you up 321 units on the year. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
That is unbelievable. We were both on Brian Harmon last week, which boy, that was really nice.
That was a good one.
Anytime it's those triple digit ones, especially because I follow your work, read and listen to what you discussed about him. Same deal with me. It didn't feel like such a long shot, right? It actually felt like he was one of the better plays last week. I felt.
Yeah, right there with you, man. Everything checked out, game measured perfectly, stats wise. I'm a big stats guy. Uh, really religiously follow my model each week, and he was right up there. And just the season before too, T6 in 2022, just everything kind of lined up, and it just worked out perfect.
It was a lot of fun to watch. I mentioned this today on the ESPN show Northwest Florida I go on. I was really disappointed though in the coverage Sunday. Like counting his waggles and stuff when he's in the final group. I'm all for like call out slow play when needed, but it's circumstantial, right? Like when you're in the final group trying to win the biggest tournament of your life, you're playing unbelievable golf. There's literally nobody behind you. I was just really disappointed they spent so much time on that kind of stuff and not enough on the fact of the performance he had because no other player reached 9, 10, 11, 12, or 13 under. Only Sepp Straka got to 8 under. That was for 2 holes before he fell back to 7. And I just felt like they didn't do a good enough job of really kind of hammering the point that this was a historic win by a guy that you would not expect it from.
Yeah, definitely right there with you, man. The way, like you said, they counted the waggles and talked about that's how you learn to play the game of golf, and that's what keeps you to relax and things like that. And the guy's in the biggest stage of the sport about to change his entire life right there, right then and there, and everything. So yeah, in all, it wasn't a perfect viewing pleasure for what should have been a historic moment in the game of golf.
Not a surprise from NBC. And I joked with my dad the other day that 5 years ago, if you had told me I missed Johnny Miller, I would have told you were crazy, but I really miss Johnny Miller. Before we get into this week, the 3M Open, anytime I have somebody that, has had the success and knowledge and stuff that you do at what, we all aspire to do, which is do well gambling on golf, kind of just go through quickly what is your process each week? How do you decide your plays for the week? Is it you have a certain you know I don't know procedure that you follow each week, or is it different week to week? And kind of what are you trying to do to get your plays the best they can be?
Yeah, so it's pretty much same each and every week. It's on Monday. I sit down to knock out my article, my model for the week, and figure out who I'm going to place on the betting card. Because of course, Monday's pretty much when you get your best odds when the books drop. So you want to be kind of right then and there before people start getting on guys, their numbers start going down. I consume a lot of content on the internet when it comes to golf. Gambling, I know gambling. Excuse me. I know the Lines is a fantastic weekly article. I love what they do there. I consume a lot of them, but it's just a lot of understanding the course, right? It's I've been doing this for a decent amount of time now, for years, so been following the sport for decades. So just knowing what these courses are and what they demand. If it's a new course, I do a lot of research on the course, what type of holes, greens, everything like that. And from there, after I have that understanding, I just take tick off in my head what stats are important this week, and usually I keep it around 10 to 13 different key stats that I use, and produce my model from there. But yeah, just a lot of research, understanding of the course really is what goes into all of it.
Yeah, I'm with you. And the big thing that I've been trying to explain to, friends, listeners, followers, etc. We're both very data driven people. I'm the same way in the DFS football. It's funny how golf is kind of like baseball used to be, that a lot of people think that it's more, feel and, I know this guy generally plays these courses well, when it's like there is so much data at your fingertips now that you can literally know what kind of strokes gain numbers have led to success at each event, and to not use that to me is just baffling because it's right there at our fingertips.
Yeah, it's right there. The PGA Tour does a fantastic job at offering so many different forms of stats right there that you can just pull up in any second. A lot of other stats. I know I produce some of my own stats when it comes to strokes gained putting per grass type. You can find that on WeKnowFans.com. Keep up to date there. That's a big one I like to follow. That's very important. Different greens play different ways, different grasses play different ways. So, yeah, just very data driven, and that's basically where it all stems from. It's from just being a stats nerd and using Excel.
All right, let's hopefully continue both of our hot ways as we get into the 3M Open. It's in Twin Cities, TPC Twin Cities track. It's a kind of a typical TPC venue in the sense that you have, a lot of birdie opportunities. You got some short par fours. I think it's the most par fours from 350 to 400 yards of any course on the PGA Tour. You got some reachable par fives. The stadium style par threes, which is great for viewing both in person and obviously on television. I don't know about you. I put a huge emphasis on strokes gained off the tee this week, bogey avoidance, birdie, opportunities gained. The big thing for strokes gained off the tee I looked at, though, is with water in place so much off the tee, I leaned, a little bit more towards driving accuracy than just your typical, strokes gained off the tee metrics. Par 71, 7,400 yards. This is now the fifth year that this event's been held here. It's been very fruitful for people that have gotten the right long shots. Tony Finau, I know, kind of broke that up last year, being a 14-1 winner. But before that, the three previous were all over 100-1. So don't you think this is kind of a take your shot week, where if you have a good feeling about a guy with long odds that maybe, looks at some of your models or some of the stats, there's, some history here that it's not uncommon for somebody you would not expect necessarily to win this event.
Yeah, and we just talked about this on my podcast I recorded before I hopped on here. A lot of people like to talk down these type of events, these smaller field events, but they're so exciting to me. I love to see these guys that, the unsung heroes of the tour, right, get their chance, their shot at producing results. And we've seen it here, the 3M Open, a smaller field following the Open every year. So, yeah, really excited about this type of event. Love to see it. And, these are the type of events that there's a lot of money to be made, right? It's not, elevated event where you have every single person in the world and your tops are going to come out and win. Typically the same thing with majors. We saw the Brian Harmon a week ago, but typically it's just the top end, kind of shine through. But this year, the 3M Open, the top guys, the quote unquote top guys we have this week are not in good form either. So they're playing here out of desperation opposed to out of choice. So that's going to make for some great golf and in turn, some great betting cards.
Yeah, to further your point, like you had a double dip last week. You had Beate too, right? At the
Oh yes, sir. Actually,
so I mean, there's a prime example of a guy that if you've just been watching the elevated events, you probably don't know a lot about him. But we, people that follow golf week in and week out, we've seen a lot of him in these smaller events, knew the talent. And again, that was a great call by you. But we learn so much from these events that can help you. Not just in these fields that are not quite so elite, but also just week to week, especially with prop bets and things like those. There's a few stats that I really leaned into this week. One of them was I love the person who is basically behind this tournament had a quote where he wanted to make this tournament lots of birdies and lots of train wrecks, but he didn't
Yes,
want
I
to
saw
make it
that.
overly difficult, which I love that quote. So I immediately looked, okay, how many guys are there in the field that are both, top, say, 30 and birdies are better gained, but also they don't make a ton of bogeys. They're in bogey avoidance. So you got names like Hideki, Ben Martin, Eric Cole, Yager, Cameron Young, Mark Hubbard, Tony Finau, Emiliano Grillo, Ryan Fox. All those guys, I think, are good plays this week. Several of them are in my DK plays, a few of my bets. For the course comp, what course did you look at to be the closest resemblance to this?
Yeah, so I don't do a lot of course comps or even like recent form or excuse me in terms of like past events at similar events. I did gravitate a little bit towards Rocket Mortgage Classic. Midwest type of track. Not necessarily a TPC, but kind of felt that way, right? Bent grass greens, a lot of that. So that's where I went to a recent course that kind of I felt plays the same way.
Yeah, and I love doing that, and that was definitely one of the ones I listed as well. And what I like the most about it is it's recent, right? So
Yeah,
you can kind of roll in recent form on a similar venue, which is always good. The other course that I really looked at, I said in my column that I kind of consider it like an easier version of Sawgrass in many ways because there is a lot of trouble lurking uh, kind of everywhere, but players can make plenty of birdies. It's not quite as difficult, but it's actually the Honda is the one that I think is the closest related to it. And it's just because of the tee shots. Even Sawgrass does not have water come into play so much off the tee, which this course does. So again, like just some stats that I was looking at, I went to the top 10 in strokes gained off the tee, avoiding water. Some of the names that really stood out to me were Garrett Higgo, Keith Mitchell, Gary Woodland, Cameron Young. That's not ever a surprise. Cam Davis, S.H. Kim, and Ludwig Adberg, who I do want to talk about him a little bit when we get there. Obviously, I looked at the top 10 in strokes gained approach. Are you with me that like strokes gained approach and ball striking are always something that I'm looking at every single event, particularly and ones that there's not a real history of, say, around the green, putting, etc., being a really high premium at that venue.
of course. That's basically where I start each and every model is strokes game approach or ball striking. And this week I have both of them here. But no, to be competent in this world of PGA golf, you have to be a competent approach player. There's no doubt about that because, every single hole you're going to have an approach play. Maybe barring a par three, but in the same way, it's pretty much an approach shot opposed to a tee shot. So yeah, every single hole you're going to have either one or multiple approach shots, opposed to around the green you may avoid that or sand saves, things like that. So approach is definitely a figure that I invest in heavily each and every week.
And then the last stat that I really leaned into this week was there was only 9 players in the field who were top 50 in both driving distance and accuracy. And again, it's a fairly long course. I mean, it's 7,400 yards basically, par 71. That's not a short track, but because of the emphasis on not hitting the ball in the hazard off the tee, what guys were kind of top 50 in driving distance and accuracy. And again, I like this list a lot for players for DK and for your bets. I don't think you can really go wrong with any of these guys. It was Brent Grant, Garrett Higgo. Well, actually, I say that. Ryan Palmer, I still don't trust, but Austin Eckert, Lee Hodges, Tony Finau, Sepp Straka, CT Pan, and Tano Geo. And again, I don't ever want to tell somebody you look at one stat and that's the end all be all, but I like to usually pick 3 or 4 stats and I do lean heavily into those. That's kind of like my theme for the week. Obviously, there will be outliers that they don't necessarily fit that narrative, but I seem to have more success when I, really try to figure out, okay, what do I think, after reading other experts like yourself's work, what stats do I think you're going to, pop this week and try to really kind of zone in on those. And that's where I get a majority of my plays from.
Yeah, right there with you. So I do run my overall model. I said 10 to 13, somewhere in that range, stats each and every week. But when I'm going down, you're going to get to a point where it's going to be close between a few guys. And then there are always those stats in your mind that are more important for any respective tournament. My model, of course, is weighted towards the stats that I value more. But sometimes it still doesn't, produce a perfect figure. So there are times where I'm looking at my model and there's a top 10 in a certain stat that I know is super important that week. So definitely going to lean that way.
Always makes me feel good when somebody who has a lot of success agrees with me. So appreciate that there, Nate. So real quickly, I do want to go through my DK plays for this week. For anybody that listens to the show or follows me knows that is the article I write for Fantasy Six Pack each week. I give 10 plays. I do an official DK lineup. I give 4 additional plays. That is actually where most of my successes came from. I've had the winner in 7 of the last 13 events out of those 10 plays. That's not necessarily my goal. It's a bonus. And it's like what I tell people, I don't bet all 10 people each week because even though as hot as it's been lately, that would be kind of insane. But it's nice when a week like last week where, I had Harmon and Day. So I had a good week in DK, and then I also was on Brian Harmon betting wise. So that's a perfect storm. But this week, just to go through it, if you want to, see more information on it, you can read the article again. That's on Fantasy Six Pack. Also on Wednesdays, go on ESPN Northwest Florida Radio, the Inside Drive with Ryan Mulvey. And we spend usually about 30 minutes just breaking down the course. And again, I go into detail on all these plays. And some of these guys will come up when we get to our bets here in just a second. But for the official lineup, I really wanted to anchor 3 guys in the $9,000 range because I like a lot of the players in that range more so than even the guys in the 10K range. So Emiliano Grillo, 9,700 is the most expensive player. I paired him with Sepp Straka at 9,500 and Gary Woodland, 9,200. I think the best value this week is Lucas Glover at 8,200, what he has done recently. Full disclosure, CT Pan at 6,900 is a gamble, but I look at what he has done at the Honda, which again, I think PGA National is a very good comp course. He's had a lot of success there with 3 top 20s. He's only got 1 start at this venue, but he finished 31st. And I think he's going to be really low owned because he had the wrist injuries I guess it's been now about 4 or 5 weeks ago. He missed the cut in his last 2 events, but before that he had 2 top 5s. So I do think he could be a sneaky good play and be low owned. And then I just had to throw somebody in, when you decide to go all in on 3 guys in the 9K range, which is what I thought was the best model this week. I had to take somebody 6,500 and below. Bryce Garnett, I'm not going to lie, I don't really know anything about him, and I follow golf all the time, but when I see a guy has 4 career starts at this venue and his worst finish is 31st, and when you look deeper into that, he only has 3 top 35 finishes in the last 2 seasons, so 2 of those 3 came at this venue. That's enough in that price range for me to go ahead and add him to the lineup. He was the final. The 4 other options I looked at, Hideki at 10K, I'm not crazy about it, but just Hideki's such a good ball striker. At this venue, you can do a lot worse. He's kind of due to do well. Mark Hubbard, 8,200, just a guy that just makes so many birdies. Anytime I see a course that there is going to be a lot of birdies made, Mark Hubbard is one of the first guys I look at because he doesn't have to do that top 10, top 5 bonus points on DK to actually score a lot of points because he makes so many birdies. Eric Cole, 7,800, who anybody who follows me knows he's kind of my guy. I don't know why his value has not gone up on DK. He's been consistently great. He makes a lot of birdies. He's got 7 top 25s in the last 12 events. And then Garrett Higo, 7,400, is the last play of my official plays for DK. He is arguably the guy in the field that hits it the furthest, but also the straightest. And again, I think that's going to play a huge role this week. Before we get into the bets, is there any DK plays that you would like to discuss, or you kind of want to highlight, or that I missed?
Yeah, so a few names there we crossed on, and Grillo is one of them. I know you mentioned Glover. I'm all over Glover this week. Love that play, 8,200, great value. Adam Hadwin's another name I like. You're spending up in the 8,000 price range, and in your case, it's just not possible when you're playing 3 of 9s. Just really, really like what he does. Was in a playoff 2 weeks or a few weeks back at Rocket Mortgage Classic alongside Colin Morikawa, and they both failed to Ricky Fowler. Also plays T12 at the RBC Canadian Open recently. He's currently 11th on tour in bogey avoidance,
Got
27th in
tackled
accuracy.
really
He
well
did
too on that grade.
trying to celebrate with countryman Nick Taylor, and just got laid out by security. He, he just checks the boxes, man, and some good value on the books, 45-1, like that as well. So, off the tee, so distance wise, he's not quite there, but the accuracy is there. So, we talked about favoring accuracy over distance this week. So really like Adwin. Glover we talked about. Kevin Yu's a guy I'm always all over. He just models so well, and had a decent performance at the John Deere Classic with the T6 there. I know I missed the cut of the Genesis Scottish Open, but man, this guy just does it all. He's just
That's
we
an
have to.
outlier event, though, right? Like something like the Scottish Open, I don't really look at that because with the weather, if you don't have a lot of experience at a venue like
Plus,
that,
going across the pond
right.
there, that traveling, it's hard, on a golfer to keep doing that. So, he's getting into form. We know what type of golfer this guy is coming up through the ranks, and that knee injury sidelined him for multiple months, and he just continues to knock the rust off and get back into his game. So he's going to be there. It's going to be coming soon, and 7,100 is great value for a Kevin Yu. Also like Aaron Ray this week at 79, or Rye, excuse me. Fantastic ball striker, very accurate off the tee. Green regulation numbers are there. Approach numbers are there. He does it all. The putting, could be a bit of concern, but even then, in his last out in the Rocket Mortgage Classic, he gained 2.264 strokes on the green, and that was also on bent grass. So, I talked about that. If we want to go real deep here, if you need someone that's really low, I'm going back to the well with Takashi Gadara, 6,200. I know I played in the last 2 weeks and he burnt me with 2 missed cuts, but I still think there's something there. He had 4 consecutive made cuts between the Mexico Open, ATT, Byron Nelson, Rocket Mortgage, and John Deere. He actually has made 7 of 12 cuts on this calendar year. If you exclude the last 2, that's 10 or 7 of 10. So, you're clear down at 6,200 in this type of field, and you're getting a former tour winner. I know 2018 when he won the RPC Heritage, but still he's done it before.
Brian Harman hadn't won since 2018, and we saw that that can change real quick.
It can. So Katera down there is another name. I really like this week.
And I always remind listeners, people who read my columns and stuff, if they're under $7,000, it's a crapshoot. I mean, obviously you want those plays to hit, but if they miss the cut a couple of weeks in a row, that's what happens. You just want to try to catch them when they have the good week. I will say with Aaron Rye, you were very fortunate because Alan, my co-host, it's one of those guys, and I'm sure you have those, that if you're on them, there's no way they're going to do well. And Alan, anytime he picks Rye, it's like it's the death of him. And when he's not on him, or he, for instance, is in Jamaica, it almost makes me assured he's going to have a really good finish this week. So that way Alan can send me a lot of text messages cussing him and his family this weekend. So love all that stuff. Let's get into the fun stuff. Let's get into our bets. Your low guy on the poll this week was Sungjae M. Why don't you go into why he is your betting favorite? He is your lowest odd pick, right?
Sungjae M, yes, correct. 16-1. Again, this is a possible more of a feel than he does line up statistically this week, but there's just something about this. He has the course, form here. Last year, I think he placed T2 last year. The run of form recently isn't great. It was real bad there for a bit, but he had a stretch earlier this year with a T6 at the Players, T16 at the Masters, T7 at the RPC Heritage, and T8 at the Wells Fargo. Then went overseas to Korea, dominated that event, and came back and just wasn't the same golfer. But he's getting back in the form, a top 20 last week at the Open. When he's on one of the purest ball strikers the tour has to offer. So, I guess it's more of a quote unquote get right tournament for Sungjae Im with the FedEx Cup playoffs, 2 weeks away, but more so that than, the stats still line up.
Yeah. And again, I look at the Honda, which is one of my, favorite comp courses. He's got a great record there. So, completely co-sign with that. The lowest guy I got that we don't share is Sepp Straka. It's got picked on a little bit on the ESPN show today about this, but he's been using Kevin Kisner's caddy the last 2 weeks, and he won at the John Deere, shot 59 in the final round, went over to the Open, again using Kisner's caddy, obviously finished runner up. I actually am one of those people that I believe caddies don't get enough credit, and it can make a huge difference when you get somebody different on the bag. And Kisner is taking some significant time off. In his words, he sucks right now. So for the time being, Straka is going to have him on the bag. And until I see some different results, again, a win and a runner up, especially two totally different venues. Obviously, one not as much of a big field event, but the Open, being a major, is one of the biggest ones. And even without, throw the caddy stuff out the window, he just is a great play at this event. He's top 10 in comp course history. He's one of only 6 players in the field who are above average in strokes gained off the tee, approach, opportunities gained, and bogey avoidance. He plays courses with water off the tee very well. He's obviously got a win at the comp course that I look at the most, PGA National, and he has a top 20 finish here. It's only, one, he's actually got 2 miscuts, which is a little bit scary, but he was playing nowhere near the level he is now. So it makes me pretty confident that those 22-1 odds are, pretty good. We share another guy at 22-1 odds. Why don't you get into a little bit why you like Emiliano Grillo so much this week?
Yeah, we talk about, recent form. Graylo's there, had a fantastic Open. I think he placed T6 there last week or somewhere thereabout.
Exactly.
Also placed T50 the Travelers a month ago, elevated event. Has a victory in the season at Charles Schwab, back in the victory column after 5-year hiatus, I believe it was. But, again, good ball striker, 31st on tour in that. He's 34th in green and regulation, 47th in birdie or betters, 49th in approach, 53rd off the tee. A confident putter, 56 in strokes gained putting bent grass as well. So everything's just lining up this week. He's a very hot golfer on tour, coming off, that type of performance at the Open's really just a morale boost, right? So if you're going to be coming into this type of a field after what you did the last week of the Open, I know the travel may be something to worry about. 10 hours to fly back from England to this event this week, but man, 22-1. When the books opened, he was better odds. I messed around a little bit, and then he kept dropping and dropping to 22-1. But even there, I'm still ecstatic about playing Grillo this week at 22-1.
100% cosign everything you said. Remember, this is a guy that in 3 starts here, he has 2 top 3 finishes. So obviously, he loves this golf course. Since April, he has a win and 4 top 10s in his last 10 events. What more can you ask for? You have a guy that is playing great golf. He's done very well at this venue. He is somebody that is top 35 in the field in all the categories you'd look for on a course like this. He's, strokes gained total, tee to green, ball striking, off the tee. And, again, like for DK purposes and also really for betting board, I like him more than all the guys in the 10, K range. And I like him. I do kind of co-sign the M pick. I've came around to him the more research I've done. I read, obviously your column and stuff. But I think Grillo is arguably, playing the best golf of anybody in this field. This is a venue he's done well at. I think he's a value there, which is kind of crazy that we're at a point where Emiliano Grillo at 22-1 is somebody that, we're all jumping on, but he's deserved it. And, I agree with you that obviously the travel and stuff is a concern, but you also have to remember there is a lot of money for these guys still to play for. And say if Grillo can pick up another win or top 5, it almost guarantees that he is going to have a chance to win the FedEx Cup. And that is serious cash at the end of the year. So a lot of motivation for him. And also, there's, I think, about 30 guys that are kind of in that 55 to 85 range that they have a lot to play for because, this year the tour has changed it from 125 getting into the FedEx to only 70. So that'll be interesting to keep up with as well. A guy that I added to my betting board, and I know some people are probably going to be like, really, he's not playing great, but it's Gary Woodland. He is so overdue for a good finish. Woodland has only one top 10 finish this season. It was all the way back at the Genesis. For his career, since 2018, he's averaged 4.5 top 10 finishes a season. So I think there's real chance that, especially again in kind of a weaker field, he's going to have a get right week. Woodland finished 11th at this venue, his only start in 2021. The big thing for me, again, kind of like with Sung J M, when I think of a ball striking course, Gary Woodland is one of the first names that comes to mind. He's top 5 in the field in strokes gained off the tee, tee to green, on approach, and ball striking. So I think this is a venue that even if he, his bugaboo this year has obviously actually been around the greens. His scrambling has been awful. But historically, that really hasn't mattered here. Around the greens and scrambling has not been as big of a factor as it is in your typical events. And I think he's a little bit of a value at 35 to 1. I also really like his odds to top 5 and top 10. I just think this is a get right week for Gary Woodland. And sometimes these guys just with that kind of talent level are due to have a good event. And I think that might be the case this week. You're next on your board, right, is Adam Hadwin. Is that correct?
Yep. Love Hadwin this week. I think the value is fantastic. I think 45 to 1 is a great price. Again, 2 weeks or a few weeks ago at T2 at the Rocket Mortgage Classic, found the playoff long Colin Morikawa to Ricky Fowler. Form is there. Checks the boxes, 11th in bogey avoidance. I know I talked about it when we talked about some DFS plays there, so I won't reiterate the fact there. But, I just love the odds, 45 to 1, playing some great golf. And, he's won on tour before.
And we talk about this, me and Alan do a lot. There's guys that win tournaments, and there are guys that don't. Adam Hadwin is somebody who wins tournaments consistently for his career. So anytime in a field where most of the names above Adam Hadwin are, that have lower odds, they have less career wins than he does. And I always love being able to get a guy that actually wins, which is what you need to hit these bets at, to your point, kind of a good discount. I feel like on the betting board, I definitely loved looking at his odds at 45 to 1, and I have not yet, but I'm still thinking I'm going to end up putting a bet on him before the week's over with. We are sharing Lucas Glover this week. I talked about a few weeks ago that, Glover had a bad year, and he spoke about how he really needed to have a good 6-week period in order to maintain his card. And boy, has he proven he was taking that seriously. 3 straight top 6 finishes. His numbers, ball striking, are still as good as they've ever been, which is saying something because Glover has always been an extreme ball striker. I want to make sure I get this right. Over his last 3 events, he has gained 25.6 shots on the field tee to green, 4.5 off the tee, and 20.1 on approach. But most impressive is the fact that with that ugly-ass broom putter that he has, he's actually gaining strokes on the green. He's gained 8.3 strokes on the green. I think he is arguably the best value this week on the betting board because, again, we talk about guys that win. Lucas Glover has won a lot of tournaments. He's won a major championship. He's playing very well right now. He's one of the 6 players in the field above average in opportunities gained, bogey avoidance, course history, as well as strokes gained off the tee and on approach. And he's second in the field in strokes gained approach and birdies opportunity. I mean, there's not much not to love about Lucas Glover this week.
Yeah, if there is to be a downfall, right, it is the putting. But after he switched to that long putter, he's had, the last 3 weeks, let's see, 5.414 gained on the green at the Rocket Mortgage Classic. Again, bent grass, 3.582 at the John Deere. And I know he did lose a few, 0.658 on the greens at the Barbasol, which, you don't want to be losing.
Nothing.
yeah. You don't want to be losing strokes. So, you talked about it. Glover is such a pure ball striker that he doesn't need to putt lights out to win a tournament. He just needs to hold his own, maybe gain a stroke or two, and he's going to be there, and he's proven to do that in the last 3 weeks.
All right, the next guy on your board, again, we kind of mentioned in the DK plays, but I do want you just to hammer home again. Aaron Rye 50-1. And again, because Allen is not here and he can't make an official pick, you should be all in on this play this week.
There we go. I don't know Allen, so I'm not gonna beat him down. But if that's to happen, I mean, I guess I hope you enjoy your vacation there.
All right, so a couple of long shots. I know you mentioned him briefly, but why don't you tell me why Kevin Yu is kind of your long shot play this week?
Man, Kevin Yu, it's just a matter of time. He is a fantastic golfer. He's risen to the ranks in a hurry. 1100 or 11,000 plus 11,000, so 110-1 is where I have him. But man, second on tour in both ball striking and green and regulations, third off the tee, seventh in birdie or better, 11th in par 5 average scoring, 17th bogey avoidance, man, 50th in accuracy, 67th approach. He's actually a competent putter on the greens, 98th in strokes gained putting on bent grass. There isn't anything bad about this guy's game. And a T6 at the John Deere Classic prior to that miscut the Genesis Scottish Open. His time is coming, and he is a quote unquote golf prodigy, and it's going to happen. And I just hope I'm there on the card, as you said, as the Rye situation with your co-host there, that he keeps betting him, and that when he doesn't hit, he doesn't hit. But I'm just hoping that it doesn't happen with you here, and the 1 week I'm not on him, he goes on to hit.
I think it's very important what you said about he's sort of a young phenom, and we go all the way back to John Rahm, who was an example, because me and Alan have been doing our show for forever, that there's these guys that come along that you just see it, with the talent. And as long as their odds don't get to that point where it's like, okay, can I really justify betting on them? A guy would use talent when you're getting 100+1 odds, especially in like non-elevated, events that are not the best players in the world. It's the potential for a boom. It's the potential for what happened with Brian Harman last week. I mean, for different reasons, but the same kind of principle that he's got a legit chance of winning anytime he tees it up. He has that kind of talent. I love that play. I mentioned CT Pan. Again, this is totally just because of his history at the Honda, which again was my favorite comp course for him. And then the fact that I know, again, that he had the wrist issue and then he missed 2 cuts. One of them being the Scottish Open, which I think is kind of a wash, as we talked about. But he had 2 top 5s, the week before. One of those events was on bent greens. CT Pan is the kind of guy that when it's a course that puts emphasis both on driving distance and driving accuracy, he is somebody that can just smoke that driver right down the middle of the fairway. And if he just has a decent week putting with the rest of his numbers, he can be in contention. He's somebody that obviously is my long shot, but I also love him at 10-1 to top 10, and you can get him 4-1 to top 5. Before we get out of here, because I kind of mentioned him briefly, but where are you at with Ludwig Aberg? Because this is a course that really should set up well for him. I'm just not crazy about his odds on DK and his betting odds, because it's almost like the inverse of Kevin Yu, where the hype is real. Don't get me wrong. He's super talented guy, but it's like the betting world is too smart to it already. Is that kind of where you are too?
Oh yeah, we see this, every year or even multiple times a year. There's a new shiny toy, right? That
Right.
they come on and come out of nowhere and catches everyone's attention, and then we're on them, everyone left and right. And like you said, his odds are way too slim to be betting them at those prices. There's no proven track record on the PGA Tour, no victories yet. Of course, I do believe they will be coming. This guy is elite in that aspect. But man, I'd argue probably Kevin Yu may even be a better golfer than Ludwig Aberg actually is. So
Nope.
I believe that. I believe that. So it's just we see this even more so, say like a Ricky Fowler in recent years. I know he went on to win this year, but just a fan hype, just gravitate that way, that people are just going to back him, and say they've been there, done that, and hopefully that he does hit and they can be there on the maiden voyage of a victory. But no, I like the guy, fantastic, skill sets all there. It's just I just can't justify those numbers for someone who hasn't proven anything yet.
Exactly, because it would not surprise either one of us, right, if he won this week.
Oh, yeah.
It wouldn't shock me, but it's just I don't think that the odds are worth the risk. I will say from a symmetry standpoint, Matthew Wolff won in his 7th PGA start at this venue. This is Adberg's 7th PGA start. So don't get me wrong. My crazy brain has immediately went to that. The difference was Matthew Wolff was 125 to 1 to win, to where Adberg is one of like the top 10 guys in odds on the field. Nate, I cannot thank you enough for coming on tonight. Plug all the great stuff that you do, because you do just phenomenal work.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. That's where I do most of my interactions at WKFNate. I also run WeKnowFantasy.com, but basically anything fantasy sports, football, baseball, basketball, NASCAR, or golf. We cover you there. I have my weekly Out of the Rough articles, which I break down the PGA DP World Tour each and every week, as well as LPGA majors. Offer my DFS plays there. Full betting cards. I do a podcast on the We Know Fantasy Podcast Network, Out of the Rough, talking with various people of the golf community about each and every week of golf. Just love fantasy sports, love sports and all. So I'm passionate about writing as well. And that's what I went to school to do, and I don't do it for a living anymore. I did for a bit, so it's an outlet to do that. So I just love writing, love sports, and love fantasy sports, and all, I guess, making some money along the way.
Well, again, not only do I appreciate you coming in and filling in for Alan, but I just appreciate your work out there. You're always one of the first people that I check to see, what angles are you taking, what players do you like, and there's no better feeling, especially this year, when I see we are sharing plays, because I know that usually means I am on the right track. But again, Nate, thank you so much for coming on here. Be sure to follow Fantasy Six Pack's Twitter channel. If you're not, be sure to subscribe to the Fantasy Six Pack YouTube channel. And you can join Fantasy Six Pack's award-winning Discord with all kinds of tools and rankings, access to all of the writers and content creators for Fantasy Six Pack. You can get a 15% discount with the promo code F6PMLB. And for Keith Flemming and Nate from We Know Fantasy, this has been the 2 Off the Tee preview of the 3M Open. Good luck, everybody, this week.